speaking of long runway, I think everybody who is a USC football fan is expecting that Lincoln Riley is going to be there for a long time. He's going to win multiple conference championships. Don't forget they're going to the Big Ten soon, and compete for national championships, restoring what many believe is where USC should be. This, to me, Bud, is one of the perfect examples of looking at the situation that you take over and being willing to give some grace to that first recruiting class. Though it's one of the reasons we're highlighting this group of hires is because we can't judge you off of what you did in such a short amount of time. You really need that full cycle. But after as bad as things got under Clay Helton, Lincoln Riley even has a little bit of work to do to be able to restore where the Trojans are at on the recruiting trail. What did you make of Lincoln Riley's efforts now that he had finally had a full year and some good on-field success in the fall to go ahead and recruit that 2023 class?
Chip, so I look here, national rank 15, conference rank 2, 2 5-stars, 9 4-stars. I'm not sure if that's updated with Walker Lyons, who just committed to USC, the tight end who they got, who was also considering Georgia. But one thing I see here is only 20 high school kids. So USC, as you mentioned, coming off Clay Helton was basically recruiting as a lame duck for the last 2 years and that he was on campus. And so I feel like that kind of hurt USC's roster. They are going really heavy in the transfer portal again, probably the heaviest of any of these teams in order to try to correct some of that. But you are seeing some high-level guys step in who I think are going to be different than the typical talents that you see in the Big Ten. You can get some things out on the West Coast, and there's some things you really can't get. Big defensive linemen out on the West Coast oftentimes just don't exist, especially in California. But what does exist, quarterbacks and receivers. And Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison basically dragged this team to the Pac-12 title game this year, and then they made the Cotton Bowl where they had a crazy, come-from-ahead loss to Tulane. But look, getting Malachi and Branch, these guys are just different. Malachi has played a lot of football, very polished dude. Zachariah Branch is probably the closest thing that we've seen to Tyreek Hill. He is just very uncoverable in one-on-ones in Orlando. Not that they did a whole lot at Under Armour, but I went out there all the days. And Chip, he was just not somebody who high school defensive backs could stick with in space at all. With Malachi throwing him the ball, I think that's a combination that can cook quite a bit and have a lot of success here, both in their final year in the Pac-12 and as they move into the Big Ten. Those are just special players. You also get Mekhi Lemon, who's a really good receiver in his own right. They are having to go to the transfer portal more to, like you might say, where's the beef, right? The old Wendy's commercial. No, I guess no free ads. Sorry, CBS 24/7. But they're having to go to the transfer portal more to get their big men. But we're seeing them have some success there too. So owning your own backyard is important. Now, I did just see that Rod Pleasant decided to go to Oregon. He was considering USC. He's about the only guy in his class who's legitimately faster than Nick Harbor in a short area. So nice win for Dan Lanning. I think one that USC would have wanted to keep home, though. That's a nice little rivalry kind of budding here. And I think it's a rivalry that even though USC is going to the Big Ten, will continue to exist, dude, because they've butted heads and Lanning's won his fair share.
Yeah, and it's going to exist on the recruiting trail. And when we get to the expanded college football playoff, these are going to be two programs that are going to expect to be in it. We could get some nice, quarterfinal matchups, some nice first-round matchups between these two, to which, and thank you again, Bud Elliott, just letting you know, Rod Pleasant, one of the top uncommitted prospects heading into the day, has decided on Oregon. That's great news for Dan Lanning as they end up coming up short with Nick Harbor. So, of the names that we were going to have that were really going to cause reverberations, Oregon coming up with a big win here, USC on the losing end of some sides. But I'm going to put you on the spot. Dan Lanning or Lincoln Riley, who would you power rank ahead of the other from a recruiting perspective for the next 3 years?
Ooh, next 3 years. I'm still going to go Dan Lanning based on what he's proven. Like, he was an excellent recruiter at Georgia. He's killed it so far in his 2 classes at Oregon. Now, maybe you tell me that USC with the Big Ten money, they kick it into a different gear, and that's possible. Maybe I'll be wrong. All takes expose me here. But I'm going to go Dan Lanning by a hair.
Yeah, the Lincoln Riley advantage is on Saturdays, and the Dan Lanning advantage is on like the other 300 some odd days of the year. That he's winning on the recruiting trail, and of course, we have to acknowledge Lincoln Riley's one of the top offensive minds in the entire sport right now. But if we're just talking recruiting, that was the way I set it up. I'd take Dan Lanning over Lincoln Riley, and that is remarkable for a coach who is so early in his tenure of ever being a head coach.
And
Chip, stunning stuff from the Ducks. Again, Rod Pleasant committing to Oregon.
Lincoln has the big-time geography advantage, too. Like, would you rather recruit in L.A. or Eugene? And Lanning's overcoming that. So I'm really impressed with what they're doing at Oregon.